Yo, what is going on, NFT Bros Podcast listeners? This is Adam, your host, and today I have FuzzyWizDum on with me. He is a entrepreneur who has been in business since he was 21, so he has a lot of insights in business and the back end of crypto and everything we got going on. He's been in crypto full-time for like 2.5, 3 years, so he's very knowledgeable, and I'm excited to dive into the topics at hand today. So why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, let them know who you are, what you've done, a little bit of a background of your crypto experience, and then we'll just dive into the subject we got going on today.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it. And my name is Jonathon. So a little bit of a dox there, but I've owned a few different companies over the years, and I've been pretty much heavy into sales and a lot of Web 2 stuff. During COVID, when everything shut down, I got exposed. I was in the markets, doing a lot of stuff in the markets. I got exposed to crypto and really went down the rabbit hole and started, buying NFTs, getting into different communities, researching, doing lots of different things like that. I volunteered my time with a few different projects just to kind of try to understand the space a little bit more. And I helped out with a VC. I helped out with a researching project, a couple others, and really enjoyed it. And so since then, I've now kind of rearranged some of my business activities to allow me to have more time to pursue crypto Web3 stuff. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Nice. That's awesome. Dude, I'm really excited that we got connected and what we're going to talk about today, because I'm like 5 episodes behind on editing right now. But last episode that I recorded, not the last episode that got posted for the listeners, the last episode I recorded, we kind of touched on this subject of like communities and the future of NFT technology for Web 2 companies specifically to be able to interact with their community and their fan base and their supporters in a more, I guess, deep way and have more depth to that relationship. And so I'd just love to hear kind of like your viewpoints on that, where you see the future of like community-based marketing and community involvement with these bigger Web 2 companies coming into Web 3 and what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah. And I mean, this is one of those subjects that a lot of people are talking about across the space. I'm seeing it happen on quite a few different calls and spaces, podcasts and things. And when I came in to crypto Web3, I jumped into a couple different communities. I got into NT. I got into, NT was the one I was most active in at first, and a couple others. And, what I'm finding is that it's such a new thing. Like the NFT community concept is so new that a lot of people are still trying to figure out where it fits into the puzzle of everything. So I've given this a lot of thought, and I think when we look at that, when we zoom out and look at like the trend of communities and social experiences, so if you go back, let's go back to like the 60s, 70s, 80s, actually really the 80s through the 2000s. So the 80s through the 2000s, that was like when media really became popular. You had MTV and VH1, and you had, all these broadcasting stations, you had talk shows, all these things started to become very popular in like the 80s and to 2000s. What happened was you had these single people become these mega superstar celebrities. They became those were the influencers of that time, right? They were one person, and you had millions or hundreds of millions of people would follow them when they would talk about something, when they would wear something on a red carpet or in a TV episode, or they would, be at a concert. They were the trendsetters. And I think what's happened is there's a trend from that's now come into. So during our age, like the 2000s to 2020, that has now shifted where people have kind of gotten away from the mega superstar celebrities, and they've come down to these influencers with the, with YouTube and social media and things coming around now. these influencers have come out, and now these influencers have maybe tens, hundreds of thousands of followers. This is their community, maybe a million or a few million, but the group has gotten smaller, and the number of people, the influencers, have become greater. There's more of these people, and these are communities. And I think that the reason that that's happened is because if you go back to like the 80s to 2000s, when we were kids, when I was a kid, I don't know, you're a lot younger than me. Well, when I don't know what, I can't read it.
1997.
97. Okay. Yeah, I feel old. So when we were kids, you know, we would look to these celebrities for kind of the trends in pop culture, right? But our social experiences was with our friends, with our small groups of friends. And then you got into the 2000s, and that kind of shifted. Everything was social media. Things became online. People became much more disconnected in a real life way. You know, people tended to like a lot of their friends were, you know, maybe online, or they didn't have a lot of friends that they hung out with in person. And so that took away from the social experience that people long for. You look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like belongingness and community is one of those things. And so what I find really interesting is that Web3, if you look at the trend of mega superstar celebrities, you know, one for millions of followers, and then you have influencers, and maybe there's dozens or hundreds of influencers for hundreds or thousands of followers. I think that trend is going to continue, and you're going to see in Web3 communities, there's going to be community leads, mods, admins, the people who really stand out in these communities. They're the ones that are going to become the influencers. They're the ones that are going to be kind of like giving their community the social experience that they're looking for. And so that's what I found. Like you see people come into these communities in Web3. They kind of bounce around. I call them like the Web3 wanderers, because they come into these Discord groups and servers, and they're, you know, maybe they'll post something, they'll post a message. Nobody ever responds to them because they don't know them, right? You get the leads or the more popular people in that community. They post something, and everybody's responding. There's dozens of responses. And so after a little while, this floater, you know, he might decide, well, he or she might decide, you know, I'm going to move on. I'm not getting any attention. I'm not getting that social experience that I'm looking for. So I'm going to move on. And they bounce from server to server to server until they find a server where they can put down roots and people actually engage with them and respond to them. And so they're getting that social experience, and they're getting the exposure to kind of the person at the top. Like the community leads oftentimes are more well known than the founders themselves, right? And they're well trusted, they're respected. So I think that trend is going to continue. And as we see the metaverse take over, we see people really getting into Web3, these communities are going to become these little like microcosms of pop culture and trends. And I think that's really interesting. And I'm not going to talk about it today, but the project I'm working on really ties into that whole concept of community leaders being the next influencers, the influencers of tomorrow.
Yeah, we spoke exactly about, you know, what you just spoke about yesterday on the podcast I recorded, which was like Gojira did a very good job at this, and like their network of employees and other people who work for them, whether it's for free or paid, they are super well known in the space, not only by their PFP, right? That's a recognizable thing, but you know, their name recognition, the roles that they're in, the essentially power that they have within these communities as like alpha callers for P Gojira, right? Those, you know, people pay attention to that. You know, you gain Twitter followers just off having that in your bio, right? Or Llamaverse, or, you know, whatever these communities are, these community leads for what Bored Ape Yacht Club is doing, right? They're like community-based leads. They had like a big DAO vote, and like there was, a lot of stuff going on with that. They have these smaller inner working communities within their ecosystem to help not only spread the message but keep holders and investors happy. And like, yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting thing to see play out, right? Because it's growing now, but it's still very small. And what I'm really looking forward to is seeing how Discord, or somebody who's going to come and build a Discord competitor for, Web3 specifically, is going to be able to essentially create more of a social environment to where we can share posts and not just chat back and forth within that, software or platform, which is interesting to me. I'm keeping an eye, and I'm keeping an eye on people trying to build something like that. I haven't seen anything yet, but I'm excited to see where that goes.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because Discord is such a difficult thing for a lot of people, especially Web 2. People that are in Web 2, they come in, they try to get into Discord. It's clunky and it's hard to navigate. If you're not somebody who's already in there or understands that, or somebody who's really tech savvy, it's difficult for a lot of people. So I think there is a need for something else. I'm not sure who's going to build it, or, the problem with building new platforms is adoption. You have adoption and attrition, and, if you don't have the people there, then it fizzles out pretty quickly. So to me, I think it's going to be more likely that one of these existing platforms has an add-on or changes the way that they're structured rather than some new product coming out. I think it's more likely.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I agree with you. Twitter has a huge opportunity for this as well, to take a lot of, crypto users and take a lot of the users off of Discord just by creating some simplistic membership program via tokenized, token gates, right? Yep. And so, like, if Twitter were to do that and offer a token gated subscription to where you can see private announcements and private tweets from a project or business or influencer, they have the subscribe for exclusive content type. But as soon as they add a token gate, I think at that point they'll become, a competitor of Discord. I'm not going to say they'll be a Discord. They're not going to build out what Discord has. That's not what they are. But being able to add token gates to content is going to be huge. And with Elon taking over and his vision for the platform, I do foresee some sort of NFT technology integration at a much further scale than is already on the platform, with the PFP verification.
Yep. Yeah, and I think if we're talking about the need for a change with Discord or with Twitter, like, to me, social media, it's a step in the right direction. But in real life, socially, social media does nothing really for you. It helps you to keep tabs on what's happening with people because you can post, but to really fill the social need that people have, it has to be communication. And that happens on Discord. The problem with Discord is it's all text-based and it's all, chatting, and you got to scroll for 10 miles to try to catch up on a conversation. I think that a product where you can have posts where you can kind of share what you're up to or what you're doing. It's like sharing pictures between people, like between friends. But the chatting or voice is really where I think the space needs to go. And as you get more with Metaverse projects coming in and people spend more and more time in these projects, it's like you're going to have these rooms and these penthouses that you can decorate, and you can really create your identity within that project, within that metaverse, that people can kind of get to know you just by stepping foot in your space in the metaverse. But the real social need that people have, that the reason people are spending time in Discord is to be able to engage with people and get that response. And I think as people realize that that's much more satisfying than social media, than posting on social media and waiting, refreshing to see if people are liking it, you know, the feeling and the response you get from actually chatting and spending time with people in these types of servers and environments is way more satisfying, and people will start to, you know, gravitate towards that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with what happened with COVID and the lockdowns and the drastic reduction in social interactions in person, I think really hurt the world overall, right? I think
Yep.
it hurt it in a very negative way. And, you know, I do foresee the metaverse improving that, right? You know, you have these people who do want to come on social media, interact with these influencers, interact with these community leads, interact with other holders of these projects. And, you know, I think the metaverse is going to be a way that you can come to, hey, let's say Just Cube's Clubhouse in Sandbox, right? I'm
Yep.
in there in my office working. You know what I mean? But you can't come and disturb me, but you can come and hang out with the other holders who are kicking it in the metaverse, right? You're just online, but it just adds that little bit more of like connectivity and a real social interaction that you don't get on social media, right? You can comment. There's no chance, there's no guarantee that, you know, said influencer or said community lead is going to see that. But, you know, hey, you're hanging out in the clubhouse during an event that they're hosting. Maybe it's a metaverse poker tournament, and you're sitting at a metaverse poker table and you're just chatting with everybody, right? You have a
Right.
chat going. I think there is a lot of future of social interactions there. To me, it's not something that's very desirable in my eyes. I love human connection, real human interactions. And so, I like to see where we're going with the metaverse, but then again, it's kind of like it's promoting not real human interaction. But that's the way it's going anyways, and it won't change.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm the same way. I prefer human interaction over anything else, right? But the thing is, like, so the metaverse, I think, is a little limiting on what the potential is of, you know, what the technology is going to offer us in the future. So I look at like augmented reality. When we get a real good set, like headset for augmented reality, it's going to change everything, because like what you were just saying, you know, you can be on social media, you can put a post up. There's no telling whether your favorite, you know, influencer or whoever is going to see that post or respond to that. But, you know, imagine if you had an office in a digital building, you know, a metaverse building. You're in your physical office and you can do your work in your office and everything, and nobody's going to bother you, right? But there's also a common area. Like, look at shared offices building. Imagine if there was a metaverse that was a shared office project, and you could rent an office in that building that's right next to your favorite influencer, or you're in a building that's full of people who are like-minded, and you could sit in your office at my desk right here and nobody's going to bother me. But with the touch of a button, I can be in the common area and I can be talking to and seeing the avatar of my favorite people. So you're working with them, but you're not. You know, that's to me, that's the equivalent of an AR style Discord, where you can hop in and out of voice chat and you can engage with people if you're not busy. If you have, you know, I think that's going to be really cool.
Sorry for the pause. That's it's an interesting thought. Sometimes I've realized with doing this podcast, sometimes I need to just stop and think before I speak. You know, I'm young. I haven't really figured out how to do that perfectly yet, but working on it. Definitely improving since the first episode. I listened to the first episode the other day, and then I listened to the latest episode, and I was like, wow, I say so much more or less. Like, but anyways, to get back on topic, you know, I think there's gonna be a really, really big push within like gaming communities. specifically like streamers, right? A Tim the Tatman metaverse in a sandbox or something like that, or like the Twitch metaverse. Maybe you can come in and just sit down in Tim's, I don't know, theater and watch him play, right? Throw on a headset, you sit on your couch instead of just staring at the screen of your phone or of your laptop to watch Tim play some Call of Duty. You sit on your couch, you throw a headset in, and you're with your homie from Australia. He's sitting right next to you, and you're just sitting there in a movie theater watching him play, right? You know, I think there's a lot of possibility with that, and what you mentioned with like Discord and the ability to have like a Discord metaverse based on each individual Discord and community, that could be cool, you know? So like when you're in the Discord app, if you click, you know, hey, I want to leave Just Cubes and I want to go to Neo Tokyo, you hop in the Neo Tokyo and it just opens, you know, a Neo Tokyo door or whatever it is, you know, and you just see a bunch of people hanging out. Instead of the chat, you just walk up in your little AR and start, you know, and getting involved in the conversations that are happening in the room. And I think it will provide more of a natural environment for things to happen. Just like you said, the open environment, like the open workspace, you know, like WeWork, but the metaverse for WeWork, right? Like that could be really interesting, because then let's say WeWork creates a metaverse, which, by the way, WeWork, if you do this is my idea. You stole it. I'm suing you. Let's say WeWork opens a co-working space in the metaverse, right? You can come in there. You pay top dollar to have access to their crypto and NFTs WeWorking space, right? Dope. Now you're in a room with a lot of similar people doing something similar that you could potentially network with and work together on future project, right? Now you have a lot more connections. It's easier to connect with people. Like, it's kind of hard to connect with people over text, you know? Right. You don't have that inflection in your tone of voice when you're speaking to somebody, right? And it'll help in the metaverse, and that will come across. But like, I think your point is really on par. That could be very cool. I could definitely see myself paying for a subscription to a WeWork and you know, joining hey, this is just a group of entrepreneurs, right? And they're in software. Cool. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to talk. I'm going to network. And I think it could be really interesting, because it's kind of hard to connect online. And that could be really intriguing, especially if there's a price tag to join those rooms, right? Because then you know, like, okay, if it's $150 a month, the people that are in here, or $1,000 a month, the people that are in here are, you know, operators. They're building something, you know, that's going to probably be here in a while. And so connecting with more people and not connecting with scammers, I think it will help mitigate scams.
Yeah, I think you have, you know, if you have augmented reality glasses, you can basically put anybody anywhere in your room that you want. And in their room, you're going to be placed wherever they want you, you know, and if you look at like what Aukeyverse is doing, you know, that could be a incredible application for something like Aukeyverse, where they could, you know, basically have that shared AR experience. You're in your room and I place you, you know, over here at your desk, and we could talk, or we can mute each other and not, you know, you can't see me when I'm muted or whatever. Like, I think that's huge potential for conference meetings, and, you know, I think the possibilities of that concept are pretty endless. And that delivers the social experience that people are looking for.
I definitely agree. So not to change this subject, because this is interesting, but I forgot that I should have started the episode with this question. I need to get better at that. I just have a sticky note on my podcasting mic. A question that I like asking every single one of my guests is, how do you describe an NFT to somebody who doesn't understand the technology? Like you're at family get together, like Christmas, right? Right around the corner, your aunt comes up to you. Hey, Jonathon, what are you up to? How's life? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, I'm in NFTs. What's an NFT? Please explain in your terms, like to somebody who has like no experience in technology or crypto.
Oh, that's a great question. I think,
And feel free to like think on it for a second because I can cut out any pauses.
Yeah, I think it's tough because with different people, you're going to explain it in different ways, I think. So with somebody who understands, like I had a buddy of mine, he's been in the car dealership, space for basically his whole life. He's run dealerships, he's owned dealerships. And so I explained it to him like, when you go and register a vehicle at the DMV, they type their information into a computer, it gets sent up to the state, and, they're going to print out your little slip, and everything's held digitally in some central computer. And at any point, this lady who you're talking to could spell your name wrong, and now you don't own your car anymore. Like it. And so with NFTs, it's like digital ownership that's on a public ledger. So you're essentially creating a foolproof way of tracking the details of that item, and being able to trace the ownership of that item in a public way that can't be altered. And he got that when I explained it to him. He understood that, but I wouldn't say that to like my grandmother, right? So so I think that it's different for each person, but most people understand the fact that, like ownership is tracked in a lot of different ways, even with warranties on your refrigerator. To get your warranty, you got to fill out this little card and mail it in or go online. And, that's how they track your ownership. It's basically take any of that kind of ownership and convert it into something digital that's on a public ledger that can't be altered and can be verified by anybody in the world.
Awesome. I got a similar response from somebody for like their digital ownership was the route that they kind of took to explain it. And it works. It definitely explains it really well for someone who doesn't really comprehend the technology, right? And another question that I like asking my podcast guests is, where do you see the biggest opportunity and the biggest use cases for NFTs in the next 12 to 24 months? Like what industry, what use case, what product or service could it improve in your mind in the best way in the next 12 to 24 months?
Another great question. I think in the next 12 to 24 months, that's a pretty short time frame. So obviously you got gaming, right? Everybody thinks that gaming is most likely going to be the next, or the major catalyst that kind of launches Web3 and the blockchain. I'm not completely convinced of that. I do feel that it's going to play a big role, but people just haven't gotten it right yet. And so I think that there's a ton of potential and opportunity there, but you've got to get gamers on board and get gamers to be the ones who decide what to do with the technology. Because right now, what I'm noticing, and I've done a lot of research when I was working with the VC, like I talked to a lot of gaming projects, and unfortunately, most of these gaming projects are run by, they're not run by gamers, and they're not founded by gamers. They're founded by people who used to game, or maybe they dabble in gaming, but they're really business minded. And so to them, the idea of ownership, asset ownership in the game, or play to earn, like earning money just for doing what you love, that's all business and, focused on the money side of gaming, which is the opposite of what people are in gaming for. People are in gaming to escape reality. They want to escape real life where they have to make money and pay bills, and, they're stressed out about that crap all the time. And so trying to incorporate that stuff into all these gaming projects is a tough sell if you're going to try to get the masses on board. I think that if gaming projects could actually get real Web2 gamers to understand the technology and then tell us what they would like to see happen with it, that would be a huge push forward for that space. And there's tons of opportunity there. I also think that ticketing and, concerts, movies, and stuff like that's another 12 to 24 months. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. And so it's funny you bring up ticketing, because ticketing, in my eyes, over the next 10 years is probably going to be the biggest industry affected by NFTs, aside from like gaming and some of the other ones. But I feel like over the next 10 years, and I believe this so thoroughly, and I believe in the technology so much that I have a $10,000 bet with a friend that in the next 10 years, if by a certain date in 2031, I made the bet in 2021, if by a certain date in 2031, all ticketing of major events, sporting events, concerts, plane tickets, stuff like that, isn't NFT based, I owe her 10 grand. But I really, truly believe that this technology will be completely onboarded throughout the entire world, if not some of the major nations throughout the world that are, technology advanced, right?
So like I look at when I was a kid, our big thing was, again, with these, concerts, celebrities, movies you went to, that experience was always put into your life, like in your bedroom. You're going to put up posters of your favorite, celebrities or whatever, the crushes you had as a kid. Or when you went to these concerts or movies, like you'd keep that ticket stub. And a lot of people, they'd put them on a cork board, or they'd put pictures with the stub on a cork board or in a scrapbook or something. And like, we don't do that anymore. People don't do that anymore, right? But with NFT stubs for these events and things that you go to, they can be tied to the digital photos that you're taking, the experiences you're having, and then those can become part of your online identity. Like, I want to share this with anybody who I label as a close friend. I'm going to share this with them. And I just think that that's a really cool application. And then verifying attendance also gives you an opportunity to reward the people who are committed to projects, or musicians, or faithful followers of these types of things. Give a discount on the next concert ticket, or, hey, we just noticed that you've been to the last 20 of 22 concerts we put on. We're going to give you a free ticket, or we're going to bring you in the back to meet the band. Like, the potential of that industry, it's pretty amazing. And I agree with you. It's going to definitely change with NFTs. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So yesterday, in the podcast I recorded, we kind of touched on this a little bit, and something that I foresee being really big is musicians and artists being able to reward their, very small audience that supported them from the beginning, right? So let's say there's an artist right now, she or he is in high school, and right out of high school, they become a massive hit, right? Let's say NFT technology is completely involved in ticketing, right? There's no other way to do it, right? So their first sold out show could have, 200 people. And let's say those 200 NFTs 10 years from now still have a Twitter profile linked to them, and like are an interactive person inside their Discord community or their Metaverse community or wherever. That artist can go, hey, I'm going to throw a private event for these 200 people that were the first people to come to my sold out concert. If you guys want access to that, you now have to purchase that NFT ticket from my very first one. Therefore, improving the value of those 200 NFTs for that first concert, therefore giving back to their community. Hey, maybe I was one of her first supporters. I can't make the concert. I sell my ticket to that first concert for $500 because it's a private event, and somebody else in their community that came on later wants to go to it, but they weren't an early supporter. Now they're giving back to me in a monetary way, but also in like a really loyalty building, community building, fan base type of way. You know what I mean? And I think there's just so much opportunity to increase the loyalty and increase not only customer lifetime value and continuing to have that customer come back, but just the relationship between an artist who is so high up here in the clouds, right? They're famous. They don't really have that connection with somebody
Right.
who was at their first sold out show, but now they do. They have the opportunity to do that. And so I think that's a huge opportunity for musicians and artists to connect with their fan base like more thoroughly.
Yep. Yeah, I think for me, I try to look at history always repeats itself. Well, it doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, as they say. You know, I look at how did we used to do things, and what were the needs people had, and what were the solutions? How did they fill those needs? And how have we gotten away from that with technology, and how can technology bring us closer or back to that? Because that's the cycle. You know, all the trends and fashions, they all come back over time, right? It's the same thing with technology. It's just a longer cycle. So, like what you were just talking about, you know, back in the day, you would try to get an autograph at that concert. You'd try to get, you know, an album signed, or you'd get a t-shirt signed, and you'd frame it and you'd put it up on your wall, and that would become a symbol of you being a longtime fan. And the value of that would increase over time as that band or group or person became more and more famous. The value would increase. And I think that you're right. That's going to be the trend with NFTs. They will become that status symbol, or that piece of value that connects you to somebody that you have that, you know, admiration for. Absolutely.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, and these types of conversations are the whole reason that I run this podcast, because if for 37 minutes the listener on this podcast has not learned anything, but we just started talking about artists and that light bulb in their head clicked on, they're like, oh, okay, whoa, this technology is actually interesting. I won't write it off. Now we just helped onboard one person, right? Whether it's one person or it's 200, right? I think these conversations are valuable to have, and I think they'll just help onboard more people into Web3 in a safe manner, to have them really understand the technology and come into the space safely, right? Understanding what's going on. I encourage you, if you're a first listener, to go listen to previous episodes about, you know, what's going on in the industry, different use cases for the technology, avoiding scams, things like that, right? And so that's why sometimes I like starting the episodes with the question, what is an NFT? Because I find that, you know, led to this conversation, right? And the continued, I guess, talk about different ways to innovate with the technology and interact with your consumer or your customer. Yeah. Do you have, so I typically like keeping these like around that 40-minute mark, 45-minute mark. Sometimes they go a little bit longer for an hour. Did you have anything that you specifically wanted to talk about that maybe came to your mind while we were talking?
Well, you just mentioned safety and people coming in. So, you know, I think about that a lot, because I've got a lot of friends that they're interested in coming into this space, but it's so scary. You know, it's like, again, I compare it to something older that I know. When I was young, I went to New York City for the first time, you know, and I'm not from the city. I'm from suburbs, rural areas. So I go to New York City for the first time, and I'm scared out of my wits. You know, it's like, this is all big and scary, and there's weird people walking around, and so oftentimes you need somebody to kind of show you the ropes, like, hey, don't talk to that person, or those aren't real watches, or those aren't real movies, you know, those aren't real DVDs, that kind of stuff. And I think it's the same thing with this space, but there has to be more effort made, instead of shunning people, which I think happens a lot. You know, it's fun to razz people a little bit and joke around, but there's a lot of people trying to come into this space, and they don't know what they're doing. They're just interested. And there's no clear-cut onboarding process for bringing people from Web 2 into Web 3. And that really needs to change. And there has to be some hand-holding and telling people, like, this is how you do it, and this is what you do and don't do. You know, and I think there has to be platforms that allow for that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You know, MetaMask does a decent job at helping onboard people, but it's still confusing to somebody. So that's an interesting thing that you bring up is how do we onboard more people in an educated and safe manner, right? I do believe that NFT projects around somebody that they're loyal to, like an artist or like someone like Gary Vee, an entrepreneur, somebody who has a tight-knit community that really believes in them and trusts in them. I think it comes down to all of these small communities collectively trying to help onboard more people in a safe manner, right? So let's say I'm your buddy. I give you a call up because I saw some article on the news about NFTs, and my favorite artist is dropping an NFT project. I'm like, oh shoot, Jonathon's in NFTs. Hey, yo, Jonathon, how do I get into NFTs? My favorite artist is dropping an NFT. I want to get involved. Like, what do I do? What are the steps? What would you tell them in like a 3-step safe process to getting onboarded into, Twitter, Discord, and the overall crypto and NFT community as a whole?
Ask anybody who knows me. My favorite thing is to tell them to go watch a YouTube video. So usually I have YouTube videos on hand that I'm like, here, watch this and follow these steps. I've had a couple friends that I've actually told, like, come to my house and I'll help you get it set up. Bring your laptop. Because it's confusing. And I think that as time goes on, those things will become more clear. But right now it's very, very confusing. There was something else I was going to mention when you were talking. Give me a second. I think the idea of, like, one of the biggest struggles right now is Web 2 people coming into Web 3. And Web 3 was born out of this us versus them thing. Like, we're going to detach from traditional. We're going to disconnect from all of that. And you guys are all evil, and you're the suits, and you're this and that. And I think that needs to change, because right now Web 3 people, they think that their way is the right way and everything else is terrible. Like, look at even the general business practices of FTX. Half of that probably came from just the typical Web3 person thinking we don't need to do it the way that everybody else has done it for those years. Those are the suits, and we're going to do it different. We're going to do it our way. And I think that attitude towards people coming into the space is wrong too. Because as Web 2 people try to come into the space, they're running into these roadblocks and these issues, and people that have been here forever, it's easy. I've done this 100 times. I've got dozens of wallets. It's super easy. And you just kind of like, you forget that there's not, like, a lot of people struggle with technology. A lot of people struggle with how to do this stuff. And so that attitude, I think, needs to change. Right now, Web 3 thinks that all the Web 2 people are going to come all the way over. And Web 2 people are like, well, this is business. You gotta come over to our side and do things business, the way that we do business. But I think there's got to be something where they come together in the middle, and there's some give and takes on both sides. And Web 3 people really need to make an effort on how do we onboard Web 2 people in a way that they can actually learn, not the way we want them to learn, but the way that they can actually learn.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. Like, I guess the frame of mind that a lot of the Web3 community and builders have is like, yo, we're exclusive. We're like, this is privacy, you got to come figure it out. Right. And it's like, that's not going to work. Right. What fucking department store doesn't have sales reps in it to help you figure out where something is? Like, it's just bad business. And so I think the biggest way that we move Web3 tech forward is to help onboard more people in, not ask them to figure it out, right? We need to bring Web3 to Web 2. Not bring Web 2 users to Web 3, right? That shit's confusing for them. We need to, onboard users in an easy way, right? Like, it's digital products physical products backed by NFTs are a huge opportunity there to bring Web3 to a Web2 user, right? I'm launching a whiskey company, Blockchain Bottles. It's going to be a Web3 NFT-backed whiskey company, but we're going to bring Web3 to the Web2 user, right? The traditional whiskey drinker, or even like the hipster whiskey drinker who is like, oh, this is intriguing. Let me find out more, right? We want it to be really easy for them to come in, get involved with the community, and purchase a bottle, right? And the way we're going to do that is accept credit card mint, right? You can come into our website, you can put your email in, and you'll get, if you want a whitelist from the email raffle we do, we'll email you and say, hey, you won. Here's how to purchase, right? On our website, it's a very simple step-by-step process on how to mint, right? You click here, you put this, and then join our Discord, right? And then here's a Discord walkthrough of like what it is, right? And so we're really focused on bringing Web3 to Web2 users in more of a Web 2.5 aspect, because I feel like that's where we're at right now. We're definitely not in Web3, right? We have Web3 tech, but this industry as a whole, it shouldn't be considered Web3, right? It should be considered Web 2.5, because we're still trying to transition a ton more people into what is Web3 and the technology behind it, right? So
and there'll be a couple different. I think there's going to be a couple different groups that form out of this. Like, I like degens just as much as the next guy, right? They're good people, right? but the reality is that the majority of people in this world aren't degens, and they don't care to be. And so it reminds me of when I was a kid. Like, you had a lot of these punk rock bands, and the real underground punk rockers bands that people started listening to and following, as soon as they started to actually gain popularity and like go mainstream, the original followers were like, oh, they're sellouts, they're posers, and they stopped listening to them. I feel like that's what we see in Web3. Like, the more that a project tries to get Web2 people to come in and like, hey, check this out, check out what we're doing, we're cool, and this is useful stuff that we're creating here, you get the like degen Web3 people that are like, oh, that's not Web3, and they just kind of like dismiss it. And I think that as time goes on, that will create these two different groups. You're either like the true Web3 or you're Web 2.5.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, to be quite honest, and not to diss the degens at all, like, I'm a degen myself, right? I just so happen to be on the business side of things. So I am more focused on like the Web 2.5 audience and bringing them on board, because that's how we grow the entire industry. That's how we help you degens make more money, because there's more people in here. The more demand, the higher, you know what I mean? So
exactly.
I often see messages inside of Discords shitting on founders for going and doing something else, right? Like, when we announced that we were launching Blockchain Bottles, there was people that instantly were like, oh, well, you're just like, you're going to give up on Just Cubes. Like, you're not going to put as much effort in. And it's like, no, I'm going to put as much focused effort into Just Cubes as I need. And I'm also going to put as much focused effort into Blockchain Bottles as I need, as well as the podcast. You don't hear people complaining about the podcast because it's NFTs focused, right? It's helping spread the word and helping bring more people on. But I find that a lot of these degens look at founders starting another thing or doing something else as like a negative thing. It shouldn't be viewed as that. And, I'm good at brushing that stuff off. I've had that, and I've had, negativity thrown at me a lot throughout my life, right? I've been an entrepreneur since I was 12, similar to you, right? And so there's a lot of shit that gets thrown at you. It is what it is. Like, I just brush it off at this point. But I think the investor mindset needs to kind of shift and understand that a lot of the people who are building cool shit and are building multiple things at once, it's not because we're bored with one thing or like we want to move on from one thing and on to the next to make more money, right? Like, that's not it. I want to do this because I'm passionate about it. It's cool. Like, a whiskey brand's like, it's super cool. And I feel like it's a good way to help onboard more people from Web 2 into Web 2.5. If you can't see that, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
your opinion is not going to stop me from doing it. It's already in motion. And so I feel like that mindset has to change at some point before we actually ever really, really grow, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the bull market hype and, explosive market caps and stuff, if that can simmer down a little bit, that'll tame that attitude. Because the ones that stick around the longest are the ones that make money. And they make money because they're degens. And so, the ones that are here for the fun and the technology, they're not very good at making money. They usually quit after that bull run. So hopefully, as time goes on, we'll get more of those people sticking around.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we're right about that 50-minute mark. So I do want to thank everybody for listening. Thanks for tuning in. If you got any value out of this episode, please drop us a like, give us a review. I read those on a daily basis when I get that notification, and it really helps me grow the show. Give me some criticism. What did you like? What didn't you like? Who do you want to see on the podcast? Who do you want to hear? What topics do you want discussed? Give me some feedback. Let's really create a community around NFT Bros Podcast and get some awesome people on this show, just like yourself. Jonathon, thank you so much for coming on. I like to give, the last 60 seconds of the podcast to you to tell the listeners, how to connect with you, what you're doing, if you want to reveal anything, or, where they can follow along to, see what you're doing. I will have your Twitter and all the relevant links below in the podcast description and the show notes, as well as the YouTube description. So they can just click there to follow you. But yeah, the floor is yours.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for having me, and really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. So, yeah, everybody, keep grinding in Web3. Don't give up, and keep pursuing the technology. Build cool stuff. I am working on a project, and hopefully in the next month or two, I'll be able to come back on the show and tell you guys about it. But in the meantime, follow me on Twitter and social media. The links will be in the description. And look forward to come back.
Awesome. Thank you. Look forward to having you come back. This was a great discussion. And again, thank you, everybody listening. If you found any value, shoot him a follow, shoot me a follow, give this a share. And if you think this could help explain, if any sort of this episode could help explain what NFT technology is to somebody that you know, share the episode with them. That's all I ask. I don't take paid promotions. I don't do sponsored posts. I don't get paid to run this show. It's all out of pocket. And I won't. Yeah. So that's all I ask, is that you share, drop a like, drop a comment, drop a subscribe, give us a review. So with that, thank you. And I will see y'all in the next show. Peace.